right, now to a Fox News alert. Just breaking here in the last few moments, Chris Cuomo has been fired from CNN. CNN tweeting a statement reading in part, quote, "We retained a respected law firm to conduct the review and have terminated him effective immediately. While in the process of that review, additional information has come to light. Despite the termination, we will investigate as appropriate." Of course, everyone remembers what this is all over. His brother, Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York, under various investigations, from the nursing home scandal to all the sexual harassment accusations. It was not good. And then it turned out Chris Cuomo was helping his brother sort of deal with those investigations on the side while also just being a news anchor on CNN. And that is a big no-no. Laura, I want to come to you first because, a lot of people expected this to happen. Some people said it should happen. But then others, weren't really sure that CNN was going to follow through because we saw what happened with Jeffrey Toobin and weren't sure that CNN would make this decision. Are you surprised?
I mean, I think a lot of us are surprised because CNN has, as you just mentioned, had very low standards, apparently, by which the folks over at CNN have to abide. But I think, look, this is probably the right call. It's interesting because, Aisha, right after Chris Cuomo was suspended, before obviously this firing that we just learned of, the ratings on his show actually spiked after his suspension. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe they've been looking to figure out a way to get him out of there for a long time, and maybe this was just the extra push that they needed. But certainly it seems like that this is going to be rather well received by folks on the right and rather not well received by folks on the left. So I think it's probably going to be split down the middle.
Yeah, and I wonder, too, if Chris Cuomo himself is surprised by this. I want to pull up a statement that he made when he was initially suspended by CNN. He said this: "It hurts to even say it. It's embarrassing, but I understand it, and I understand why some people feel the way they do about what I did. I've apologized in the past, and I mean it. It's the last thing I ever wanted to do was compromise any of my colleagues." I don't know if that's too little too late. Leo, he had a choice, right? It was between the job and his family. And some would say, well, you always choose family. I mean, what's your response to this?
Oh, Aisha, thank you for the question. First of all, best decision ever made by CNN. He was conflicted. He had a conflict of interest, Aisha. He's a lawyer. He's a journalist. He had an obligation to remove himself from the matter whatsoever, completely. But you know what he did? He worked in cahoots with his brother to throw dirt on the victims who had a legitimate complaint against his brother. And so what he did was he lost all credibility. How could he ever in the future discuss a sexual harassment case? He lost credibility. CNN made the best decision. Now the team of Abbott and Costello are off the public airwaves. Chris Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, they're gone. Smart decision.
A lot of this had to do with the sexual harassment allegations that really dominated the news cycle. Everyone wanted to talk about that. A lot of people didn't want to talk about the nursing home scandal and all those people that passed away and their families that were hurting. Janice Dean, of course, our colleague, among those. Joey, I know you know Janice really well. Do you think this adds pressure now onto the new governor in New York to do more, to dig deeper into that? Because some families say she's not doing enough. She's not doing what she promised.
Well, I think the nursing home scandal is in and of itself an issue worth digging into. And I don't know the legal pathway to get all the information out there, but it's something that the state of New York holds the responsibility to see what should they have done, what could they have done, and who's responsible, because at the end of the day, people's lives were lost while the governor was doing his little press conference every day and really celebrating his reaction to coronavirus. Back to Chris Cuomo, though, specifically, the problem with Chris Cuomo is you kind of have these two things of like loyalty and integrity, right? I understand a brother being loyal to a brother. I understand a network being somewhat loyal to an anchor that they feel has served them well for a long time. But integrity matters more. And there was no integrity in how this was handled. We had a phone call recording of him on the phone on conference calls helping strategize this weeks, months
Yeah.
ago, before he was ever suspended. And so it looked to the world like CNN was looking for a way to keep him there rather than doing the right thing and acknowledge what was right in front of us. I'm not going to applaud people getting fired, but I am going to applaud maybe the right thing happening way too late.
Yeah, I mean, he was a big ratings.
Well, and
yeah, go ahead, Laura.
No, I also think that, look, this goes back to something that Leo was talking about, which is that you have to have faith that the people that are delivering the news to you are doing so with integrity, are doing so, without anything else clouding their vision. And very clearly, he had this conflict of interest. And, the people already have such a high distrust of the media to then learn that, the network that so many people were tuning into to get their news was actually, had this guy behind the scenes working with his brother while he was governor. It just makes people trust the media even less at a time when they already trust so little of the media. So I think that probably weighed into their decision as well. And look, I think we all agree this was the right choice by CNN. The right thing ultimately happened here. And it'll be interesting to see who ends up in that spot. And maybe this is going to be indicative for the future of CNN. Maybe they are turning a new page. We will have to wait and see.
No. Leo, I just want to ask you, how much of we will have to wait and see. Yes, we will. Leo, how much of this had to do with, liability? I mean, CNN came out and presented this situation where they said, look, we didn't know this was happening behind the scenes, these text message conversations and phone calls and how involved he was. One, do you believe that? And two, how much of this termination has to do with just trying to not be liable for anything?
That's a fantastic question. Those victims who might have a case against Andrew Cuomo will draw in Chris Cuomo. And since he was doing this in the course and scope of his employment, CNN might be a defendant because Chris Cuomo was doing this while he was an employee. It's great to be a lawyer. I saw all those angles. And I'm telling you right now, CNN's lawyer said, this guy is a liability. Get rid of him.
Oh my gosh, that is a really great point. I think that excellent point, especially from the legal standard, because this could have, and this could still, right? I mean, Leo, this could still wind up on that route, even though they have gotten rid of him. Could we see some of these accusers try to get together and file a suit of some sort against CNN?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The civil statute allows him to file these suits against Andrew Cuomo, the governor, in his official capacity, and all these individuals involved in helping him, the supervisor, the subordinates under Cuomo, and his brother, who basically acted as an agent by giving him advice. Oh, no, it's wide open. It's wide open for little litigation. Big time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
No more legal advice. I'm not giving out any more free legal advice.
We can't underscore how big of a deal this is. I mean, this is someone with maybe not a lot of viewers, but a primetime spot on a network that, 20 years ago is where a lot of people thought it was the only place to get news. Now, thankfully, for the last 25 years, Fox has been around to help, correct that problem. But CNN has been around for I thought it said 25. I might have said 20. I was hosting a gala last night. There was a 20 and a 25. Long story short, for a quarter of a century here, we've had Fox News, we've had CNN. CNN is a place where a lot of people go to get information. Now, if you're a Democrat, you're tuning in there. But to have someone with a primetime spot on cable news going to the camera every single night and addressing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and to now know that he was not just running interference for his brother, but helping craft a narrative that had legal ramifications. That had ramifications of people who have been done wrong, who have been assaulted potentially, not getting justice that they deserve. Your job in the media is to provide information and give people the opportunity to understand what's happening, not program them to accept bad behavior because it was your brother that was doing it, or program them to question what was more than likely and almost now proven to be legitimate victims and their grievances. Our job is to hold these people accountable, not run interference for them.
Go ahead, Leo.
And one other point. Thank you. One other point. CNN and Cuomo, they trashed Brett Kavanaugh. They threw him under the bus. Remember that?
Yeah.
They took him to the
Irony.
task. They took him to the woodshed. And here he's trying to protect his brother. Come on now. Look at the weight of the evidence. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's unfair. CNN has no credibility.
And some of the, I got to point out some of the.
I'm just going to correct Joey really quickly. It's hundreds of thousands, not a million or a million
Well,
of viewers.
I started there.
I just think about the fall from grace. I mean, when you think about, the sons of Mario Cuomo, governor of New York, his son Andrew eventually would become governor, and for what happened to him to happen, I don't know if we have this soundbite from his accusers. Can we play this just to remind everybody? This is just the tail end of a months-long scandal that has just been flowing out. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what has happened to this family. Let's play this soundbite really fast.
When he would turn his head and then, get me on the lips, it startled me. It obviously wasn't normal. The hugs definitely got closer and tighter to the point where I knew I could feel him pushing my body against his and definitely making sure that he could feel my breath up against his body.
He stands next to me and he touches my back in a not friendly way, in a sexual way.
And guys, I
Those
remember.
guys have no shame. They have no shame. Those two guys have no shame for their father.
And how many women did it take, right? I mean, it was one after another. How many women had to come forward for people in the General Assembly in New York to take this seriously and to start investigating this? And kudos to the AG for looking into this and doing a thorough job. But I remember the day that Andrew Cuomo decided to step down, I was in the newsroom in New York. I was still up there before I came down to D.C., and it was one of those out-of-body moments because I've been covering this case for so long, and someone asked, do you think this is it? Do you think it's over? And I said, no, it's not over. Just because he's decided to step down, there is so much more that can come after. Lara, what do you think happens next? Because, I mean, I don't think it's over yet.
Well, there's a lot that still has to happen. There's a lot to unpack, a lot legally, I think, that has to happen, possibly for both of them. We do have a statement from Chris Cuomo to the New York Times. I want to read it for everybody. He says, "This is not how I wanted my time at CNN to end, but I have already told you why and how I helped my brother. So let me now say, as disappointing as this is, I could not be more proud of the team at Cuomo Primetime and the work we did as CNN's #1 show in the most competitive time slot. I owe them all and will miss that group of special people who did really important work."
I think was getting wiped out by Hannity every hour. Hannity beat him to a pulp every hour. What do you mean, prime? He got wiped out by Hannity.
Well, it doesn't say a lot that was their #1 show, Leo, to your point.
Okay.
But you think about just these brothers, as Aisha was just saying, and really there has been so much that has come to light about the two of them, and it's really, I think it's kind of shocking for so many people because you feel like folks like this never get held accountable, and it is about time that you start seeing people held accountable for the things they did, the wrongs that they did. And so for both of them, look, there is still a lot to come, and we will all be paying very close attention, I can guarantee you that. But it is nice to see that the system is not totally broken and that people do get their due at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's a huge, go ahead.
You know what's really ironic about that statement he put out? He pushes it over to his team and says, I'm really proud of them for working for me and doing such a hard job. And that really underscores what makes this whole thing so egregious for both of these brothers. A lot of innocent and hard-working people, even if they're not people I agree with, have lost their careers and have been hurt by this. Not just the immediate victims, but all the people that work with them and have championed causes they believe in that are now completely undermined because of two very selfish and potentially illegal acting brothers. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I think it's a day that has that a lot of people have been waiting for, including our own Janice Dean. All those families of nursing home patients that died. Of course, the accusers, a sexual harassment accuser, it's a big day for them. But as Leo said, a lot more to come ahead for CNN, for the Cuomos. We'll see.